Dr. Loren Scott, economist, is here. Hey, Dr. Scott, how are you this morning?
Well, great. How about yourself?
Well, let's see. We had the State of the Union last night. We've got another budget impasse, a fiscal cliff here in Louisiana. But Erin wants to start with something else, something she heard on TV either yesterday or the day before.
Yeah, this might make your head explode, so I'm just telling you, take a deep breath, Doc.
Okay, here's the deep breath.
Okay. Whoopi Goldberg, your buddy, said something on her show yesterday. She said, don't get this all twisted, folks. This economy's been recovering for 72 months. Don't let him get on that TV tonight, meaning the State of the Union, and take credit for the recovering economy. It's not him. It's been recovering for 3 years.
So basically,
you really, is your head exploded yet?
No, that's very much expected. Matter of fact, I was listening to Democratic radio, to NPR this morning, and they were making the same argument, which to me is going to be remarkably silly. If you actually look at the data, look at what happened to real gross domestic product, what you will find is the recovery during the Obama time period was the slowest recovery we've had since World War II. Real gross domestic product grew at an average rate of about 2.1%, which is more of a growth rate. And I would argue, that the primary reason for that was because of policies. President Obama was very much focused on income redistribution and fairness and not on economic growth. And so if you look at his 8 years in office, 7 of those years were the highest number of pages in the Federal Registry we've had since 1960. Just an enormous number of regulations. And then, of course, he was very much focused on raising taxes instead of lowering taxes. Well, you may think, well, that's only fair, but when you increase regulations and you increase taxes, you increase the cost curves of every firm in this country, which causes them to hire fewer people and to produce less output, and that's why we had such slow growth. And so what we're having now is precisely the opposite. There's been a dramatic drop in the number of regulations and also the expectation there's going to be less regulation. And we've had a dramatic drop, well, not a dramatic, but a significant drop in taxes. And so you're going to see the cost curves of all firms start to drop, and which will cause them to hire more people and produce more output. So you're going to do not let anybody tell you that what is going on now with these 3% growth rates we've had in 2 quarters and then 2.6 or so recently, don't let anybody tell you that that's just a continuation. That's not. It's a change in policies that has caused the growth rate to be significantly faster. In fact, I think it's going to get much faster when we get further into this year.
So let's use that to segue into last night's State of the Union, specifically the president's economic message, and put it bluntly, his boastfulness, which I think is a very legitimate thing to do.
And sometimes I think he's telling a fib.
You'd have to tell me which ones are fibs, which ones you think are fibs, and which ones are not. I mean, I think. Let me be clear about one thing. I think that his position on taxes and his position on deregulation is precisely what we needed to get the economy going again. Now, the other side of the coin is his position on international trade is not one that I would endorse. I think that has the potential to create a trade war, which would put us which would certainly reverse all the good that will come from the deregulation and the tax side. What he's doing on the international trade side, I'm not sure who he's advising there. But again, you go back to your Principles of Economics course, we learned about something called comparative advantage, the law of comparative advantage, which tells us we're all better off when we engage in lowering barriers to trade, not raising barriers to trade. So that is a very worrisome part of his speech to me, and I'm just kind of watching to see just how bad that might potentially be on the economy.
Talking to Dr. Loren Scott, economist, what troubled me, and I think he was fabulous. I think he was presidential. I think he was strong. I loved it. But it troubles me when he stands there and says, this is the biggest tax cut ever of all time in the history of which it's not. The Reagan tax cut was bigger. There was a tax cut after World War. I mean, you study this stuff. If he would just say this is one of the greatest tax cuts of our generation, whatever,
No, and I totally agree with you on that. The Reagan tax cuts certainly were much larger, and matter of fact, the one that John Kennedy put in was much larger too. Now, the cut in the corporate tax rate was a very significant cut. You can't argue that the cut in the individual tax rates was real big. It wasn't anything of the order of magnitude of the Reagan years for sure. The corporate tax cut was very significant, and I think there's some. I think you're already seeing. The reason I think the economy is going to grow more is because as a result of these cuts, you've seen more and more corporations say they're raising their wage rates and giving bonuses. Well, that's going to end up in people's, and then you combine that with the tax cuts, which is going to put more money in their pockets. Well, 2/3 of real gross domestic product is consumer spending. And so I think you're going to see consumer spending really pick up as we go forward, and that's going to be helpful. And I think the other thing that's particularly good for Louisiana is now, because our corporate tax rate is so much lower, but we are way lower than Germany and France, who have a lot of chemical firms, who are now going to look around and say, wait a minute, what are we doing locating here? Let's look to some place like either Louisiana or Southeast Texas. Let's go locate there. So I think there's something really good in this specifically for Louisiana, not so much maybe for the northern part of the state where you are, but certainly for the southern part.
Let me ask you one more thing. A lot of people that are listening are wondering, am I going to see, I guess my next check or the one after that, I'm going to start seeing those tax cuts. Is that accurate?
That's accurate. Yes, I think they're going to start seeing that very, if not in the next one, certainly in the next one, you're going to start seeing the impact of the tax cuts, and I think it's going to give you the grants. And I think it may change the polling numbers. I don't know about you, but the polling numbers that we see on the president, which are very negative, it'd be interesting to see what they're like after these checks come out. And it's also, of course, we got to remember in the back of our heads, these are the same polling people who said that Hillary Clinton was going to win by a landslide.
The middle America in Louisiana, most of us are going to see more money in our checks.
Absolutely.
Dr. Loren Scott, hope we can get you back to talk about the governor's lovely budget soon.
Oh, my goodness.
I hope we can do that. I know you got thoughts on that, too. Thanks so much for your time.
Oh, my goodness. I think that sums it up, Doc. Thank you very much.
Yeah, have a good one. Bye.